A Marine. He enlisted in the Marines on the 9th of December, 1941, 2 days after Pearl Harbor, while still drunk. His buddy Carl was so blasted, the recruiter made him wait a day before joining up, saying, "This boy's just too primed." Peter McGrew joined the Marines not because they were the best, but because they would have him the quickest. That night, he tried to get drunk again, but no matter how much he drank, he seemed to get more sober. The men at the sawmill bought him round after round. Carl got too drunk again and still had to wait a day when he went down the next morning to join up. Every person in that bar bought Peter drinks, but he just remained sober with a smile on his face that did not fade. Under it was fear and a desire to run and hide. Every shot, every slap on the back, every attaboy just reinforced the fantasy of the future to come. Death. He was going to war. Roosevelt said the day after the attack, "All measures," and he was all measures. Years later, he doesn't know how close he got to running. He also does not remember her approaching him either, or him approaching her, but that eventually she was there. She smiled, and her soft hand on his made him feel able, more capable. Her blue eyes twinkled like she was already in love. Maybe those sparkling pools of azure just mirrored his look. They talked all night. He would be hard-pressed to remember what they talked about. Maybe God. Maybe the idea life was fleeting. Maybe that death was inevitable. Maybe that he did not want to be a hero, just good enough to do his part. She said stuff too. Maybe. Maybe it was that she just listened. Maybe she knew he had a burden that needed to come out. Maybe she saw the 20-year-old kid who had never been more than 20 miles from home about to be on the biggest adventure of his life. Eventually the sun rose and the time for his train to depart rapidly approached. She drove him to the station. She gave him her address. She kissed him slowly and tenderly on the lips. He thought about that kiss the entire way south. Day after joining, he was on a train heading to Marine Corps Recruit Depot, Parris Island, and he had nothing else in his head except a girl her friends called Charlie. When the sign for Parris Island stopped outside his window, he felt hungover. More hungover than ever in his life. And then he was in a uniform learning to be a Marine. 4 weeks of brutal, forced discipline and classes on history and esprit de corps. And he thought of her kiss and wrote her letters. Every night, he would scribble words and sentences and block them in paragraphs, and he would wonder how his teachers back in grade school could have failed him so readily. Told her about training and how it wasn't that bad at being a Marine and how they made him squad leader and how the other boys looked up to him. Discipline was being a Marine, and he discovered he was good at discipline. For him, being a Marine was easy. Then they gave him his baby, his M1. All glowing woodstock and shiny black metal. He aimed, he shot, he aimed again. He learned that he could shoot. He was made to be a Marine. He earned high marks on the range. He earned respect from his instructors for being squared away. He was a leader, and the men followed his example. He earned a stripe after recruit training and quickly earned another one on top of that, waiting to be deployed to the far reaches of the Pacific. He was called corporal when just 16 weeks ago he was nothing but a laborer at an upstate New York sawmill. And he thought of Charlie's kiss. In his memory, the kiss was silk on skin, was water to the parched. She sent him letters also. He read them over and over. Her words were written in expressive cursive. He would hold them to his chest and think of kissing her and talking the words of their letters to each other in person. He was in love and told her so in a letter he wrote on the night before getting on a Navy ship. He told her how she made him feel, but he never mentioned how much he feared death, because he did. As the ship rolled over a rough sea for months, the taste of salt in the air flavored everything. Coffee was salty. Waking was salty. Taking a shit was salty. Their clothes seemed to grow salt. And the funny thing, as they neared their destination, they couldn't wait to be free of their ship. Join the war. Taste lead. And before they knew it, they were. Green, lush tropics waited. And they were told, when the transport ships dropped the rear door, death would come with Japanese bullets. Most of you men will die, but for country and for revenge. God bless the Marine Corps. God bless America, said a 4-star general. And then they battled for 3 years, 8 months, 3 weeks, and 5 days. 6 million people died. And Peter McGrew did his part. He was a warrior, and his job was to kill. He killed and led his team. He took over the squad when Sergeant Hockner got 5 bullets and bled out. Then the men called him Sarge. Took over the platoon when Platoon Sergeant Fox threw himself on a grenade, and with still warm, juicy parts clinging on his uniform, McGrew got a rocker under his 3 chevrons. He got a battlefield commission when officers were few and far between. Men called him LT, and higher-ups gave him a butter bar for his collar and a .45 to wear at his side. But he did not need it. He directed others to fire their weapons, and no longer needed to fire his. Sometime late in the war, he wrote Charlie a letter. He did not write about how the day-to-day fear made him want to jump into the ocean and swim home to her. How on his first transport to a beachhead on August 6th, he pissed himself in fear, or how once the sand was under his feet, he was ready to be a Marine from that day forth. He never told her about the bodies, about his buddies, and enemy that just seemed to stack up in his memory like perfectly fitting numbers of dead. About finding Carl among the dead, how he was rail thin and shitting bloody water from his ass. No. Told her the kiss she gave him was a special paradise he could take refuge in, even in the roughest moments of his fight against the Japs. He told her how every night when the stars would shine and the moon would wax and wane, when the palm trees rustled in the breeze, she would be there with him, and they would share in a small moment of peace and hope for a world to come. Then, 3 years to the day after his fight on the island of Guadalcanal, a huge bomb was dropped, destroying a city in Japan he couldn't pronounce. Then, 9 days later, another one was dropped, and Japan surrendered. The war was over. He was asked to hang around another 6 months, but eventually got his discharge papers and transported home. He boarded a ship, and it took him to San Francisco. There, he mailed the last letter he would ever write, and 2 days later boarded a train to New York City. At Grand Central, he grabbed his duffel, smoothed out his Class A jacket, shook some offered hands, and disembarked. Then he saw her. She looked the same, her lips pursed in an ecstatic smile. She had tears drifting from her eyes. Her makeup ran in dark lines. She shook. Her hands trembled as she reached out for him. He dropped his duffel and ran to her. She opened her arms, and he could feel the warmth of her body and the fluttering of her heart as they kissed. They kissed, and kissed, and kissed, and in a moment where breath was needed, she whispered in his ear, "Of course." And from that day until he died, she was his, and he was hers.